Hey, Alia.
Hey, Jamie. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Um, it's funny. I was just thinking, like, it's been such an intense time in Chicago these last few weeks. So I'm wondering if maybe the first question of how you define actionable solidarity, like, may feel accessible to you given what you've been navigating on the ground in these last few weeks.
Yeah, these last few weeks and frankly the last, 8 months,
Yeah.
we've had some real strong representations of what actionable solidarity looks like. Just since since things started to really heat up in January and February, we've seen our, various kind of multi-faith, multi-ethnic, alliances that have existed across the city of Chicago, um, in some ways come to life a little differently than they may have 8 years prior, which is that I think there was a back in 2016 there was a little bit more of a um, I don't know, there was a more pronounced move towards trying to ensure that people recognize that solidarity existed between communities. And I think this year there's just been a little more hesitation, there's been a little more trepidation. And yet this is where I think some of the solidarity that's been being built over the last decade or so has really come to life, because I think now is where some of the just uh, whereas I think several years ago, some of the solidarity seemed a little more symbolic. It felt a little more symbolic. I think we've been feeling it in action more. So over the
Mm.
last few weeks, since the kind of, threat of federal troops coming into the city has been on everyone's minds. A lot of our, faith partners from across the city of Chicago have been really building a kind of, a quiet, but in some ways loud campaign that we're calling Faith Over Fear.
Mm.
That I think is both responding to that specific issue, but it's, we're realizing this is exactly what we need to be building to get all of our other issues moving and, and across the finish line anyway. So we're seeing solidarity really mean something significant this time around. What about for you? Because, you know, things haven't slowed
Yeah.
down, I'm sure.
No, I mean, I don't think things have slowed down for any of us. And I think for me, being part of a national organization, we have examples, of course, of solidarity on the ground in the cities that we're part of, where we have chapters. Um, and, I think it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, also just from like a risk perspective. Like what does solidarity look and sound and feel like in this time, especially for me as a white Jewish leader, as, part of a multiracial Jewish community, like I think that there are ways that being willing to take some increased risk in the name of solidarity and in the name of really deeply understanding that all of our safety is bound up with each other. It's just like so important in this moment.
What misperceptions or stereotypes about your faith or racial community do you think hinder solidarity efforts? Yeah, what barriers would you name or seek to tear down? Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. No, yeah.
yeah, no, I was just gonna ask
Yeah.
if you wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's some things that come to mind for me with this. I mean, for one, I think there's a real misperception and stereotype about that's rooted in kind of stereotypes of who Jews are in general, that the Jewish community is really kind of default white and wealthy. And in reality, our community actually is very diverse across a lot of different lines of diversity. So, the Jewish community is multiracial and multi-ethnic and multi-class, and kind of represents the same cross section of identities as any other community in the United States. And I think that understanding that complexity, or the lack of understanding of that complexity, kind of adds to stereotypes and assumptions about the Jewish community and who we are and what we care about and how we move. And so much of our work at Bend the Arc is about complicating that story to show the ways that you can't have Jewish safety without having safety for Black folks, without having safety for trans folks and queer folks, without immigrant justice. All of it is totally interconnected. And so I think that um, that is such a big barrier to both, even the Jewish community's ability to be in solidarity with other communities and vice versa, that we're working really hard to counter and to interrupt. And then within that, I would just name that in this particular moment, so much of the, there are so many ways that the current administration is using, a supposed commitment to Jewish safety as an excuse to enact their authoritarian agenda and their repressive policies. And so much that is a barrier we are massively working to tear down, is to not allow ourselves to be pitted against everyone else in the false name of safety, but to really kind of take away that tool from their toolkit to enact their agenda, and do everything we can to interrupt and help people understand that it's a smokescreen for what they're actually trying to do, and that they don't care about Jewish safety. They just want to undermine democratic norms and harm students and deport people. So yeah, that's a thing that we have been really focused on.
I think similarly, I would say one of the misperceptions or stereotypes about the Muslim community in general, similarly that we're not a monolith, which in some ways seems so in a kind of 20 plus years post 9/11 world. It seems a little nuts to have to say that, but it's still
Yeah.
true, the amount of education that people have had about, Muslims, about Islam, about, the American Muslim community in general is just, it's still not a mountain. It's not huge. And so for a lot of people in the country, at least,
Yeah.
and so having to, having to contend with just the misunderstandings that this community is vast, it's diverse, it's, not only ethnically diverse, and culturally diverse, but also politically diverse, frankly. And people are on lots of different spectrums in terms of their, their various social and political beliefs. And yet at the same time, that the American Muslim community, in terms of its role in society, its role in especially civic space, that we not only have been, but continue to be, among the strongest champions of social justice, of racial, justice,
Yeah.
and have been, very, just have been a significant part of how so the kinds of movements that so many of our communities have sought, the movements for more dignified lives for all people, just how present we really have been. And I think again there are lots of reasons for that. I think there of course within the American Muslim community there's a whole, a lot of us trying to figure out how do we line up, how do we align ourselves, how do we, you know,
Yeah.
meet our convictions with the kinds of strategy and kind of strategic movement that's actually going to help us reach our goals. And recognizing that our goals are very similar, that, to the goals of so many people that are struggling
Yeah.
for, uh, for dignified lives in this country, and abroad.
Yeah. Thank you. That's, it's such important work. And I think these two pieces, these two sides of the conversation are so interconnected too, because so much of our work too is about demonstrating how committed we are to fighting anti-Muslim bigotry alongside anti-Semitism, and that actually they're not in any way at odds with each other, but actually it's required that we fight them at the same time, and that we can't allow our communities to be pitted against each other in the name of one's safety being at the expense of the others. And that for us the fight against anti-Semitism is completely intertwined with fighting all of these other forms of bigotry and oppression, and particularly when it comes to anti-Muslim bigotry or anti-Palestinian or anti-Arab bigotry. So just wanted to lift that up to make that connection as well.
110%. Agree.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a song that I just had it on repeat in my mind yesterday. It's called Us by Brother Ali, and he just has this
Mm,
line that of course is echoed in lots of places, lots of art, literature, and pop
mhm.
culture, but just can nobody be free until we're all free. And
Yep,
it just
exactly.
felt so salient.
Yeah.
So Jamie, what do you think are some opportunities for the folks in your own community to continue to show that kind of
Yeah.
intentional solidarity?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're really focused on right now is really showing up around immigrant justice. I think for a lot of American Jews, we have many different stories of immigration and migration. And so that tends to be an issue that folks really resonate with and is complicated in this moment by the other things we spoke about around the ways that Jewish safety is actually being used as an excuse to deport people. And so it feels even more important and powerful for us as American Jews to show up for our neighbors who are being threatened by these policies, and doing things like know your rights trainings and doing kind of intentional acts of solidarity, in anticipation of ICE raids or ICE kind of presence in our
And
communities.
so I think that there are opportunities for, frankly, for different components of the American Muslim community to show up for each other and for others in ways that they uh, you know, may not have done in the past. There are folks that I think who are probably most concerned with the issue of immigration in this country, who I think can show up for folks who are, trying to fight back against the loss of their, food stamps and their
Yeah,
healthcare coverage
yeah,
in ways that they didn't before, and vice versa. And I think that people really get that now. They're really getting
yeah,
it. They're really getting
yeah,
that we can't, and not just in a self-interested way, but that really at the end of the day, all of us, it's either all of us that are going to have to get together around
yeah,
keeping, solid
yeah,
what we think is
yeah,
sacred about the democracy in this country, or we're all going to lose it all,
yeah, yes,
And so I think again, I think faith communities have a
yeah,
really just a meaningful way to do that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm really seeing that, and I'm praying that we continue to see that in the future.
yeah. Thank you. Me too. It's really, yeah, and I think just like being able to stay in the understanding that our diversity is our strength as a country, and that our ability to live and practice the religion we want to practice, we want to practice, being just the beliefs that we hold, like all of that feeling so directly under threat right now, in such a tangible way, is just, it's really scary. And I think that and I think there's opportunity for people to really come together to say no, to say, this is actually what, I mean, not to whatever, but these are the things that actually make this country potentially be great, even though some of them have never even reached the full intent to equity and justice that we claim. And so, yeah, I see a lot of, and it's interesting too, because I think, so much of it is rooted in this kind of Christian hegemonic, Christian nationalist ideology. And I think that's another thing that, of course, you and I have in common, that we're outside of that default mainstream, and trying to kind of organize to preserve our own religious freedom on top of everything else that we're navigating right now.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a long conversation just
Just
about that.
for days, for days.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
I know it's been really, even though we've only met a couple of times in the flesh, all of our Solidarity Collaborative, cohort members, I've really found that this last year, not even year, just being connected with you all, with this group, has been something that has, I don't know, it's made me feel just that. It's made me feel connected,
Yeah.
naturally, in a way that I think it's so timely. Um, and that I wouldn't have a year ago, I wouldn't have expected that I would find so much value in that. But I think you know, just the idea that that I now have access to information about what folks at organizations that are, you know, not too different from mine, who are working on issues that are very similar to the ones that we're working on across the country, are dealing with, and what and how they're facing them at this time, has been really valuable to me. I wonder if you feel the same.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I mean, I've felt from the beginning like this group has a special alchemy to it. Like I just feel like um it's just a really incredible group of leaders and just like, and I think we just were able to really click and be very honest and vulnerable kind of from the jump. And in this time, having a group of peer leaders to look to who are not entrenched in exactly the same dynamics as you know as I am, but who are dealing with such similar and kind of um, complementary, that's the word I was looking for, challenges is just a real gift, honestly. And I think it is a way to kind of lead into practicing solidarity, to having hard conversations. And then it's also, for me at least, yielded some really great opportunities for partnership, you know, deepened relationships inside of the interfaith community for me and for us, you know, getting to you know, participate in an immigration action with Date in North Jersey, or getting to you know, run into Liz at, you know, like there's just been all these different opportunities to kind of like do this work together. And um, yeah, and I feel really grateful. And then I also feel like the actual trips that we've gotten to go on together have been so powerful. And, you know, particularly getting to be in Montgomery and have that experience together of going through the legacy sites and really reckoning with the history of racial violence in this country, um and how much, you know, we can kind of see these cycles of progress and repression. There's a way that even though we're in this moment where it feels so daunting, getting to ground in what in the struggles of our, you know, of our ancestors in this country, and of people who have you know, like for at so many different points in history had to fight back against people who were fundamentally denying their humanity and their rights, and were able to come out the other side. Or, you know, even if not everyone got to come out the other side, you know, I think it's a blueprint to learn from in this moment, and to get to do that together as this diverse community ourselves was just was incredibly powerful and bolstering for me.
I think that the group that we've built, you know, the Solidarity Collaborative, um, it could not have been a better, that could not have made a more empowering experience for me. I think than if I had gone by myself or gone with another group. I think it was incredibly powerful to have gone through this very personal feeling experience at the legacy sites, and then come out of it and been able to unpack and um and kind of think about what this means to our lives in a space where there were people who didn't necessarily share that experience,
Yeah.
or that kind of, you know, historical, you know, legacy, but for whom I know it was just as important for lots of different reasons. And for me, it was such a symbol of that's what this is for. That's what this whole thing is for. We, you know, not only the sites themselves, but I think an initiative like this, I think it is for trying to bring people together to help us recognize that we are all doing separate, important, you know, distinct work, but work that all has to happen, that all of us need to be doing,
Yeah.
and that we are all better for it when we do it together, and when we are, you know, kind of feeding off of each other. So I'm so grateful to have been able to have an experience like that, with a group like that, and you know that I'm going to be looking out for all of the folks in our cohort
Yeah.
for future
Yeah.
work, future actions, future solidarity.